All set? Thank you. I'm going to be talking about funding Ethereum public goods with the Protocol Guild. My name is Trent Van Epps, and today I'm presenting in my capacity as a member of the Protocol Guild, but I also work for the Ethereum Foundation with Tim, and working with the All-Core Devs Call, and a lot of ecosystem projects, helping to coordinate upgrades, things like that. Thanks to the organizers for inviting me, and I really appreciate it. Excited to talk about this project. So let's start with what are Ethereum public goods. This is a term you've probably heard many, many times, thrown around here and there. It's a really consistent topic, but let's refresh our definition, and I want to make sure we're all on the same page. So there are two main characteristics what Ethereum public goods are, or what defines public goods. The first is that they're non-excludable. This means a user cannot be prevented from accessing it for free. And the second main characteristic of a public good is that it's non-rivalrous, meaning use by one person doesn't prevent anybody else from using it. So these are the two big characteristics. And we can consider Ethereum as a technology or the EVM as a public good for the people that use it, probably a lot of us, using the chain. This is something that we depend on, and it's really important to us as users. And underneath that, there's also, the research that evolves the protocol, the clients that implement it, and the coordination for upgrades that take that research and bring it to users actually interacting with it. These are things that all the users of the protocol benefit from. Now, today there's obviously gas fees as a congestion pricing mechanism. These are necessary, which means it's not quite a globally accessible, ubiquitous public good, but we hope that scaling and layer 2 systems are going to bring us closer on that spectrum towards a global public good as we hope it will be. So now that we've defined what they are, how are they generally funded? I want to say it's quite amazing. We're fortunate in the community that there's an amazingly rich history of funding experiments for Ethereum public goods. The biggest one you're probably aware of is the Ethereum Foundation. Does a ton of work throughout the entire ecosystem, funding client teams and different research projects. Tons of great work there. There's a couple other I'm going to go through just to illustrate the amount of experiments that are happening all the time. So there's Gitcoin. Many of you may have contributed to it. Gitcoin and CLR Fund, they do matching rounds every quarter, which uses quadratic funding mechanisms to distribute to different grants. This is probably something you've interacted with or at least heard of. Then there's some other ones which may be less well known. Optimism, the layer 2 ran retroactive public goods funding round last year where they have a selection process and then distribute funding to some projects through a public process. There's also Open Grants, which streams 4,000 Ether to a bunch of researchers over time. It's a vested stream. Last year there was large grants to execution layer clients taken from the application layer. I had the pleasure of being involved with projects like the Beacon Book and 1559 NFTs, which again create something artistic and then redirect that ETH to the people who actually produce these things. There's also the Daily Gwei 1-year anniversary NFTs. There are many, many examples of this, and I apologize if I missed yours or you're watching the stream, but I just want to emphasize this is a great thing, and we're really fortunate to have such a variety of experiments in the community. However, these all run into some similar limitations. Who curates the beneficiaries, who ends up being curated, who ultimately gets funds, and how these funds are distributed, in what form. They all approach the problem in different ways, but they all have their own limitations. To expand on that, Kevin Owocki from Gitcoin has almost trademarked the phrase, public goods are good. I don't know if he can actually trademark it, but he's trying to for sure. So I'll add to it with community funding of public goods is good. I think it reminds us of our agency as community members. It makes relationships stronger throughout the community. When we have a diversity of approaches, all those examples I listed on the other slide, we get better coverage of things that may not be visible to different people working in different parts of the ecosystem, use cases that are better fit for some purposes may not be best fit for others. And it also decentralizes power and influence throughout the ecosystem. So these are all really good things. You can have domain experts funding what needs to be funded, where they have that intimate perspective into it. So the big question that this is all leading to is listed on the slide. How should we retain talent and reward core protocol contributors? This has been a pretty consistent conversation over the years, since the beginning of Ethereum, the Genesis block, up into last year in November, and even a few weeks ago. This is a very consistent conversation in the community. And it's something that's definitely worth considering. So since November of last year, a group of core contributors, people who do research, work on clients, work on coordination for upgrades, have been collaborating to start thinking about what would an incentive mechanism for the core protocol look like. And so we came to these 3 challenges that are specifically unique to core protocol work, or at least have a specific importance to the work that people are doing on the core protocol. So the first one is curation is hard. The second, incentives are imbalanced. The third, contributor churn is bad. These are pretty basic challenges, but I'm going to go through them in the next few slides, as well as how did each challenge influence the eventual design of the protocol guild. So the first one, curation is hard. The big challenge, the first one, applications and L2s want to sponsor core development, but curation of the contributor set is really challenging unless you're intimately involved with it. And then on the inverse, protocol contributors are interested in token upside and financial benefit, but self-organizing is challenging. There's no single solution that collects people working on all these client teams and doing the work throughout the ecosystem. There's no single solution that brings them all into one place and is actively updated. And even if somebody were to try to do this expecting a single organization like Gitcoin or something to curate and maintain this list themselves, it's pretty challenging, again, unless you're intimately involved with the work that's going on already. So the design objective we took from that is that the members themselves should just self-curate this list. The second challenge is that existing solutions usually favor teams, again, because curation is hard. It's much easier to find a team, get an Ethereum address that people can send donations to, rather than the 15 to 30-odd contributors that a client team might have, for example. One of the sort of meta goals we decided to use as a guide for the work that we were doing with this project is to avoid governance and intermediation wherever we could, giving as much agency to independent contributors as possible. So the design objective we took from that is individuals should be the base unit, not teams. The second big challenge, financial incentives are skewed towards protocols built on top of the protocol. This is probably something people are really aware of, or at least have experienced in some way when they're considering how to get into the space. As a credibly neutral infrastructure with no block reward, Ethereum doesn't offer the same token incentives that an application or layer 2 would be able to provide. However, it still needs to attract and retain talent to continue to evolve the protocol. And we think as the ecosystem continues to grow, it's probably only going to get more and more competitive. I want to say this isn't to fault any individuals for weighting these incentives. This is a pretty rational thing to do. Or to fault protocols for using tokens to incentivize, contributor sets. This is just kind of the reality of the context. And obviously, final caveat is financial motivations aren't the only motivation. I know every single core contributor is here for the bigger purpose of what we're building. It's not the only motivator, or financial motivations aren't the only thing, but it's one that we think is under leveraged. So the design objective is that we will nudge the incentive balance back to the protocol by getting sponsors to share some upside from the application or L2 layer. Then the final challenge is that contributor churn is bad. There's a steep learning curve for contributors to actually start delivering value. And by value, I mean understanding how the team operates, comprehending the work that's already been in progress, and making meaningful contributions. So the design objective we wanted to consider here is that your membership has a cliff of 6 months. You have to be contributing at least for 6 months before you're actually added to this mechanism. The second challenge, contributor value grows over time, but there's less incentive for someone who's been here for 6 years to stick around and continue contributing once they're experts. There might be other opportunities. So the two design objectives we took from that is first that assets going to this mechanism should vest to reduce churn in the contributor set, help transfer knowledge between cohorts, is a really key concept, as well as you should weight contributor allocations according to time. So if somebody's been here twice as long as me, they should have, it should be reflected in how the mechanism is actually weighted. So as you've probably guessed, I've been describing what the Protocol Guild is and how it operates, and so I'll summarize it really quickly here. It's a smart contract. If you're familiar with 0x splits, we're working with this team to, they have a split protocol, and we've worked with them to design a vesting component that gets added to it. So it vests assets which are sent from sponsors. These are applications or layer 2s, any project that's building on Ethereum. And these assets can be governance tokens, layer 2 sequencer fees, recurring protocol fee revenue, fractionalized NFTs, whatever you can think of, this can accept ERC20s and ETH. And so these assets go to a weighted list of Ethereum protocol contributors. And again, the weights are directly related to how long you've been contributing. And it's self-curated and self-managed by its membership. So we get the benefit of domain experts, the people who are working on clients. They have the intimate perspective, who's doing this work on a daily basis or a regular basis. And then broadly, it's a mechanism for voluntary sponsors to share value back to the people who are doing the important work, sharing the value generated by applications. What we hope is that it will incentivize growth, stability, and reward for people who are here long-term, who are interested in making Ethereum, again, a globally accessible public good. Because we're not there yet, and there's still a lot of work to do to get us there. And we think we've designed this framework which is politically and operationally tailored to specifically fit this use case. So since November of last year, it's grown to over 100 members, which it still blows my mind that there are this many people even working on core protocol stuff from 21 different teams and 9 different independent orgs. It literally wouldn't exist without their collaborative efforts and continued membership. So shout out to any core contributors if you're in the room. And so what we're going to do is we're taking this mechanism, the way we intend to operate it, and we're running a pilot this year. The sponsoring assets, anything that's sent to this smart contract will vest for 1 year. So we're in the process of reaching out to interested sponsors who want to give back to people who are working on the core protocol, targeting 20 million in sponsorships for this first year. And I'll say shout out to Lido. They're the first project who's commit to a contribution. Yeah. But if you're part of a project and you're also interested in contributing in any way, I'd be more than happy to talk to you and guide you, explain the project, guide you through what it is and the expectations we have. Yeah, and so this pilot we'll probably do quarterly updates for the membership and the weights as people leave or join core protocol work. We're really excited to finally get this out. You know, we've been working on it for many months, but we're really excited to get it in the wild, see how it's useful, whether it can be abused and how it can be improved. And then once we have a solid idea on how to operate it, we're comfortable with it, we'll probably scale it up to a higher dollar amount and a longer vesting period, maybe 4 years. And as I'm wrapping up here, I have 2 quotes from current members, one from an anonymous core contributor, and I'll just read them off. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Without the parts, there is no whole. This project addresses the parts without diminishing the whole. And then from Michael Spruill of the Lighthouse team, Sigma Prime, they create the Lighthouse client for the consensus layer. He says, I love that Protocol Guild centers individual contributors ahead of organizations, and in doing so grants autonomy to all of the people working on Ethereum's base layer. We have an opportunity to prove the viability of an alternative funding model for public goods, which I hope will inspire many more experiments in radical economic coordination. And that's it. This QR code. This QR code will take you to the docs if you want to read more. We've tried to write up, different scenarios for how this thing can operate, how it can fail. We're especially interested in trying to anticipate ways that it can fail in many ways. But yeah, so Protocol-Guild, read the docs, follow that QR code. If you're interested in following along, Stateful Works is the organization that we'll be doing public communications through. If you're interested in learning more, contributing in any way, please reach out. I'm more than happy to explain the project. So we're in the process of getting the vesting contract and audit that will hopefully be deployed in the next few weeks. And then, yeah, we'll see where it goes from there. Thank you again to the organizers. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have a question for you. What motivated you specifically, personally, to work on Ethereum? Why Ethereum?
Sure. I'm going to steal something from Piper Merriam. He's a member of the guild, and he's been working on Ethereum for a long time. But the way he phrased it was really well said, and I'll just use his phrasing. But he said Ethereum is the greatest lever he can use to influence change in the world. And I think that's a really great way to frame it, because as an individual, what can a single person do to affect change? You could maybe become a politician. Not many people are cut out for that. You could, start a nonprofit. There are challenges associated with that. You can work individually in your own community. But working in Ethereum specifically, as I imagine many of you are working in, it's a way to be a part of shaping the future. And like Piper said, it's the way that you can, the greatest way to leverage your personal actions into global change, which is pretty wild if you think about it. So that's why I'm here. I think I couldn't be working on anything else.
Do you have any tips for developers that are starting, that want to get involved? What should they do?
Yeah, sure. So again, Piper runs this thing called the Core Developer Apprenticeship Program. We're finishing up the second cohort, and unclear when we'll run the next one, but I recommend people either check that out in the Ethereum R&D Discord. That would be the Core Developer Apprenticeship Program. We'll probably run, or hopefully run, something later this year. But it's a great way if you've been curious about core protocol work and you want to get deeper into it. That's a great place to start. And then generally with every open community or every project in crypto, the best way to get involved is to just start doing things. Just show up and ask, what can I do to be helpful? Obviously, core protocol stuff might be a little more complex. You can't just jump into it. There's a little bit of time it takes to understand how this stuff works. But yeah, just show up. Whatever your skill set, try to contribute, even like awareness for how upgrades are going, the work that Tim and I are doing around upgrades. There's ways for anybody to help with that. So yeah, show up and just see how you can be helpful.
You heard it from Trent. Just show up. Just show up and see how you can be useful. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.